last video we saved a bit of money when we can, because we finished so well and we are so much ahead of others. And then this race we only had the pace to finish around 3rd or 4th, and we finished 3rd in this race. Our weight compensation wasn't perfect, and we found out after the race. And because we were doing one stop, we also figured out that our car has more wear because we don't get stuck behind others more. At the end of the race, we were about 7 seconds behind Giovanni, and we didn't really have the pace to compete with George Buns at all. And he would have potentially just finished first if he didn't need to make the extra pit stop. I think what he did was use the medium tires. That's why he was able to be a bit quicker. But even if he used the hard ones, he would probably have beaten us anyways with such a huge gap. You can see he has about 4 laps. His tires are already worn out. We did 37 laps on our first stint, and our bad tires indicator showed up for about 5 laps. Potentially George Buns, either his tires worn out or he had the incorrect fuel. We don't know for sure, but we know that he was much quicker than us, and we were expecting to have a much better pace in the race, at least 3rd or 2nd. You can see in the race, Tuk has had a car problem suddenly in the last 10 laps or so, but we were already ahead of him, so we know that we have a better pace than him. If we look at our lap time compared to George, which was going to be about 30 to 45 seconds quicker than us if we didn't do the pit stop, we're about 0.7 seconds slower. And we were about 1.5 seconds slower than Giovanni and Ethan, who are doing 2 and 3 pit stops. And if we look at Ethan's best lap time, who was faster than Giovanni by 17 seconds, you can see the best lap times were the same, but Ethan did 3 pit stops. So potentially this track is at least 2 pit stops. Potentially have to do 3 pit stops. And we can see majority of the top contenders use either a 2 or 1 pit stop. Some use the 3 pit stops. If we look at the fastest one with 1 pit stop, they had a 0.5 seconds, 0.3 seconds quicker than others on 2 stop, their best time. And if we look at the second person on 1 pit stop, they're about 0.2, 0.3 seconds slower. Our best lap time were about 1.5 seconds slower than our rivals on 2 and 3 pit stops, but we were only 17 seconds slower. So it's already quite good considering potentially our pace is quite low and poor. If we look at another few of the people doing 1 pit stops here, we can see the lap time either is same as the people doing 2 pit stops or a bit faster, about 0.2 to 0.5 seconds slower than people on 2 pit stop. So this potentially is an indicator that this track has to be exactly 2 pit stops. Potentially 3 might work, but I'm thinking it has to be 2 pit stops, not 1, otherwise we lost time. You can see that we ranked top 300, but that's only good enough for 3rd place. And we can see that our lap time was like 0.2 seconds slower or even the same best lap as others on 2 pit stops, so definitely we lost some time by doing 1 pit stop. In the race summary, we can see that our driver made 2 mistakes, and I checked that as a clear track error, not during overtaking. And if we didn't make one of that mistakes, we would have beaten Giovanni and gained more points. And we anticipated 5% stamina left, and we got 3%. And we had a lot of fuel left over at the end of the race because we were being conservative. And we reduced the amount of fuel. That difference alone could have allowed us to beat Giovanni and gain more points. I already copied the race results into my calculator tool, and we're going to recap this track that we just did. And after we calculate all of these track variables, we get an indicator of 1.27, which fits the 1 pit stop. And if we look at the average of 2 pit stops, it's about 1.39 and about 1.44 depending on how you calculate it. Previously, we figured out that if the past results suggest like 1 pit stop less compared to what our calculator says, it's better to do the extra pit stop and match what the calculator results suggest. But then we can't do the opposite, because if the race result shows you need to do an extra pit stop, then we can't do a 1 pit stop less, even if some of the past race shows that 1 pit stop is okay. Which is what happened this race. We decided to do 1 pit stop less than the optimum because our calculator suggests that we should do 1 pit stop. And we can see a lot of our car has about 2 or 3 points extra wear, and the average is 2.6 points more wear throughout the race compared to what we anticipated. And previously we calculated that we need 45 clear risk to remain with 5 stamina, and after the race we figured out that only 3% left, and that would be a 2.155. Previously we used 2.09 based on the past results. And we also had a look at the lap times in the race to see how the weight compensation is going. And majority of the laps, excluding a bit of the first, was virtually the same throughout the race. And the temperature compensation is already spot on. I came to a conclusion that we only need about 8 points less of wear, but in reality we might need 50 to 25% less wear. We don't want to reduce it too much, otherwise if we don't have the correct values we might lose a lot of time. And the next reason is because we had a bit less wear, a bit more wear in the race compared to what our calculator suggested. So if this occurs again, then we can't have too much reduction in the weight compensation, otherwise we get out of range. So 8% is going to be the optimum one. Since we are also lacking a bit of pace for this race that we're going to do, we're also going to add 5 points in the overtaking and defending. And we're going to find that boundary where the driver makes just less than 1 mistake in overtaking, and we're going to gain a bit of time. If we look at some of the previous risks that our driver used, it was like 30 and 35. And when we used 45 risk, our driver didn't have enough stamina to make it to the end, and it became 0, so it's a few laps with less risk, so a bit less car wear. This is the only race where we can have 45 risk and our driver didn't run out of stamina. That's why we got a bit more wear. Since we are unsure if this extra weight is due to doing less pit stops or because our driver is able to push harder for longer, for the next race we're gonna add a 1 extra point to our wear calculation, so we're going to be more accurate. Otherwise, if we drop the clearance back down to 35, potentially it'll be correct the wear compensation values, but we're going to lose time with less risk. And we know that the average wear values of all of these added is about 21.3, and if we take 1 extra point divided by 21, we get 4.7%. So we need to adjust for our wear compensation values to have less than 4.7%, and then we have to reduce it by another 8%. For sponsor, there's some attention needed, and after we said the money was a bit low, we gained another 100k in the sponsorship. While 29 races is a lot, because our sponsor is easy to negotiate with, we're gonna be asking for a bit more. So we're gonna say a bit too short, so get a few more races and get more money in the future. And then we're gonna train our driver again. The same thing to reduce weight, because it's the most efficient. If we look at the season standings, while we're still 11 points more than Ethan, there's still not a huge gap, but then if we only lose about 2 to 5 points every race, then it still takes quite a few races for them to catch up, and especially considering some races we might gain points relative to them. If we look at the car level, we still have the fastest car out of everyone who are actually able to score points. And if we look at data which I recorded during the race, our car level, we still see we have the fastest car out of people who can actually score points. And we can see Ethan's car, while it's not that fast, it's probably not all that far behind us. And we can see we are the one with the most amount of money, 16 mil compared to 10 or 8, who has the fastest car in the top 3. And we can see Tukas has done some testing laps recently, so he can gain some car performance points, but it's going to take him 3 races for it to kick in. Because testing increases the car wear, and the most amount of gain is at the start of the season, because you can wear down the parts quicker, gain car performance points, and upgrade the parts quicker, so it can be more competitive earlier and gain those extra points, but still have extra performance for the future of the season. I figured out that if we look at 36 CTR and 47 CTR, the front wing wear stays at 22, and our average wear was 22, and we want 1 extra point. And if we look at the center of 47 and 36, we'll get the new CTR for 1 increased wear on each point, which is 41.5 for the CTR. We're going to replace all of these parts that are bred. If we look at our engine, we can't downgrade it to save money, but we can downgrade our brakes. Since this track is power dependent and all the upcoming tracks are mostly just power and handling, we're going to upgrade our engine to a very high level 5. And because the higher levels only can downgrade a bit, so we get faster performance and maybe it lasts another race. So it's probably worth the extra money. gained a lot of power points, and we had same handling and acceleration now. We also copied the weight into our calculator tools. We updated to use the correct weight values after car update. If we look at the calculator tool, hard and medium tires have similar tire wear lift, but we know this track is optimum with 2 pit stops, and only we would choose the other strategies if we are able to wear out more of our tires. And we entered the fuel required, and we're considering doing 20, 19, 18 laps with 2 extra laps then the total. We're gonna find the setup for this race. We accidentally entered 0 into the find step, so we got a few calculations wrong, and we entered the wrong value for the suspension. We're gonna do an extra practice lap to find the setup. We calculated the final setup, and we're gonna find the wing split. The first one we did minus 80, and we add minus 60, and then we did 80 plus 60, and the optimum would be somewhere close to this minus 80, so we're gonna do 80 minus 10. Our qualifying time is within 0.3 seconds from our best time, so it's very good. Since the race is a wet start, we forgot to add a few wet laps to our tire and fuel load. And we know that the minimum amount of rain is going to be about 5 minutes or so, and can suggest the quickest turns dry is 2 laps. We entered the wet fuel into our calculator tool, and then if we use 2 laps, you can see the amount of wet fuel we need is 6.3. And we know we want to do 20 laps first, so we can minus 2 of 20 laps, and we'll get 18 laps, and 18 laps of dry plus 2 of wet would equal to 85 liters of fuel. So we're gonna enter 86 liters for the fuel. We also know that the max time it will rain is about 13 minutes, and that's 6 laps. If we do 6 laps and a total of 20 laps, and we'll add the fuel, we'll get 79 liters. And if we compare it to our fuel required, if it rains very little, only 2 laps is not much difference, only 6 liters difference in fuel. So we can just assume that the highest fuel load, because there's not much difference. And then we look at the setup for Q2, and we already entered it. If we look at our qualifying time, Tomase was quicker in Q2 because he used very low fuel, and we know he's not going to be intention to win. Now Q1 is about 0.9 seconds quicker than our rivals, which is a good indicator that we're going to do well. Now Q2 about 0.7, 0.9 quicker. look at the Q1, Q2, we did super good. Top 50 out of 1,500, and we are only 1.3 seconds slower than top 5. And that indicates that we're probably going to do well in this race. We compared to our teammates, our qualifying is 1.5 seconds quicker, but our car is much quicker and a better driver. We entered the field required to do the 2019-18 laps. And we set the race start to use hard tires because it's going to go dry in a few laps. We're also going to enter the higher risk that we want for the overtaking. We'll add 5 points to the previous one. And because there's no chance of weather going wet, we're not going to change tires if something happens. Since our driver's stamina is probably not going to recover fully, we're just going to assume 90 stamina remaining, and we have to reduce the risk a bit and change the way a bit. And if we assume 85 drain in stamina, we can get 39 risk. So we dropped our risk to 39 to make sure we can finish the race with some stamina left. And since last race, our average wear is about 2.3 points more, 2.3 points less compared to the calculator. And we added 1 point for this higher clear track that we're using. And we might lose another point because we use a bit lower risk. So we can just keep the compensation values and our car weight from the calculator the same, and we'll be exactly compensating like about 2 points more for this race. So we'll have the same weight compensation for similar to last race. Since we got 2.6 more wear average across each part last race, we know that this race we might lose 1 point because we're doing 2 stop. So we only need to have 1 extra point, so the same 42 CTR compared to the race. And then we don't want to have the extra offset from the car weight compensation, because we added this 4.7% from increase 1 of our calculated weight, so we don't need it. And then we're gonna use the 0.965 instead of 0.922. Because we're doing 2 versus 1 pit stop, then we'll have 1 less wear. And because we're using a bit higher risk, then we'll increase the wear by 1 again. So we don't need to change anything for the average wear, and only need to add an offset. We entered the final setup for the race after doing the wet to dry conversion.